I was only gone for 5 minutes, but when I got back to my car, there was a handprint smeared across the driver's side window, fresh, clear, and definitely not mine. I had parked at this rest stop in the middle of nowhere, just off the highway in Tennessee. It was late, around 11 p.m, and the place was deserted except for a couple of semi-trucks parked further down the lot. I just needed to stretch my legs, maybe use the bathroom real quick. The building was old, a bit run down, but still functional. The bathroom was gross, but nothing out of the ordinary for a roadside rest stop. I washed my hands and headed back to my car, eager to get back on the road. But as soon as I saw that handprint, my stomach dropped. It was huge, way bigger than my hand, and it looked like whoever left it had dragged their fingers down the glass. It was too detailed to be an old smudge. I wiped my eyes, thinking maybe I was just tired from the long drive, but it was still there, clear as day. I looked around the parking lot, but there was no one in sight. Just my car, the 2 trucks, and the empty bathroom building. I got a weird feeling like someone was watching me. My heart started racing, but I tried to calm myself down. Maybe it was just a prank. A trucker messing with me? I figured I could clean the window and get out of there as fast as possible. I unlocked the car and reached into the back seat for a towel to wipe the glass. That's when I noticed something else. The handprint wasn't the only mark. There was another set of prints on the passenger side window, smaller this time, like someone had been leaning against the car looking inside. I froze. I hadn't heard anyone approach. I hadn't seen anyone near the car when I walked up. The rest stop was still empty. The trucks were parked too far away for the drivers to have done it unnoticed, and besides, why would they? My first instinct was to get in the car and lock the doors, but something told me that wasn't the best idea. What if whoever left those prints was still close by, watching me? I tried to stay calm, glancing around again, trying to spot anything unusual, but it was so quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. The only sound was the distant hum of the highway. I needed to leave. Now! I jumped into the driver's seat, locking the doors immediately. My hands were shaking as I jammed the key into the ignition and turned it. The engine sputtered and then died. Come on, I muttered, trying again. This time it started. I felt a wave of relief but knew I had to get out of there fast. As I was about to throw the car into drive, a flash of movement in my side mirror caught my eye. My blood ran cold. There, in the distance near the trees lining the rest stop, I saw someone standing in the shadows just out of reach of the streetlight. I couldn't make out much. Just a dark figure standing completely still, watching me. I didn't waste another second. I floored it, the tyres screeching as I peeled out of the parking lot and back onto the highway. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights following me, but there was nothing. Just the empty road stretching out behind me. I drove for miles before I finally started to calm down. But the image of that handprint wouldn't leave my mind. Who left it? Why were they watching me? And what would have happened if I hadn't gotten out of there when I did? I pulled into the next town and stopped at a well-lit gas station, where I sat in the car trying to make sense of what just happened. I wiped the handprint off the window, but even after it was gone, I still felt uneasy, like I'd gotten lucky. As I stared at the empty stretch of road in front of me, I knew one thing for sure. I'd never stop at a lonely rest stop again. I was driving alone through some back roads in rural Pennsylvania, heading to my parents' place. It was late and the sky was pitch black except for the faint glow of my headlights. I'd been driving for hours and my body was begging for a break. When I saw the sign for a rest stop up ahead, I figured it was the perfect time to stretch my legs and grab a snack from the vending machines. I pulled into the rest stop, which was emptier than I expected. But then again, it was almost midnight. The only other vehicle in the lot was an old van parked a few spaces away from mine. It looked beat up, with its paint chipping and a cracked side mirror. I barely noticed it as I grabbed my phone and headed toward the restroom. After a quick bathroom break, I walked back out to my car. That's when I noticed something odd. The driver of the van was staring at me. I couldn't see much of his face in the dim light, but his silhouette was unmistakable. He was just sitting there, watching me from behind the steering wheel. I shrugged it off at first, thinking maybe he was just resting like I was. But as I got closer to my car, I glanced back at him. He hadn't moved an inch. It gave me the creeps, so I hurried and got in my car, locking the doors as soon as I sat down. I decided to scroll through my phone for a bit, giving myself a few more minutes to relax before heading back on the road. When I looked up again, the van was gone. I didn't hear it start or see it leave. It just disappeared. I was relieved, honestly. The guy had weirded me out and I figured he just took off. I started my car and pulled back onto the highway, ready to get this trip over with. About 30 minutes later, I needed gas. There was a small service station coming up, so I pulled in. The place was empty, and as I filled up, I couldn't shake this strange feeling. The whole thing with the van was still sitting in the back of my mind, nagging at me. But I pushed it aside and went inside to pay for the gas and grab a drink. When I got back to my car, my stomach dropped. There, sitting in my passenger seat, was the driver from the van. I froze. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. He just sat there, staring straight ahead like he belonged in my car, like this was totally normal. My hand was trembling as I reached for my phone. I fumbled, trying to unlock it. But he didn't move, didn't look at me, just sat there, breathing calmly, his hands resting onto his lap. Finally, I found my voice. "What the hell are you doing in my car?" No answer. His head turned slowly toward me, and I finally got a good look at him. His eyes were sunken, dark circles beneath them, and his skin looked pale, almost sickly. He didn't look like he was from around here. His clothes were old, tattered, like something out of a different time. Panic surged through me. I yanked open my car door and jumped out, nearly dropping my keys as I backed away. I was in full-blown freak-out mode, my heart racing. I didn't know whether to run, scream, or call the cops. But when I looked back at the car, he was gone. The passenger seat was empty, like nothing had happened. The door was still locked. I stood there, breathing hard, trying to wrap my head around what just happened. Had I imagined it? Was I just that tired? I didn't stick around to find out. I jumped back in my car, locked all the doors again, and sped out of there like a bat out of hell. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were turning white. I didn't stop again for another hour. When I finally did, it was at a well-lit, crowded rest stop. There were plenty of people around, so I felt safer. I parked and got out, walking over to a bench to try and calm myself down. My mind was spinning, replaying everything that had happened. Then I saw it. The same van, parked a few spaces away from mine. I couldn't believe it. There was no way that thing had followed me. I hadn't seen it for miles. My head was spinning and I felt like I was going to be sick. But when I looked at the driver's seat, it was empty. No one was inside this time. The van just sat there, silent, like it was watching me. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but who would believe me? I didn't even know what I was seeing myself. Still, I couldn't stay there any longer. I got back in my car, locked the doors and left. For the rest of the drive, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Every shadow on the road, every headlight behind me felt like that van was following. My nerves were shot by the time I finally pulled into my parents' driveway. I didn't sleep much that night. Every noise outside made me jump. I kept looking out the window, half expecting to see the van parked at the end of the street, but it never came. A few days later, I couldn't get it out of my mind, so I started looking into it. I found an article online about disappearances along that highway, stories of travellers who stopped at rest areas and were never seen again. Some of them had mentioned a van, just like the one I saw. It's been weeks now, and I haven't seen the van again, but every time I drive at night I can't help but scan the road looking for it. I keep wondering if it's out there somewhere, watching, waiting for its next victim. I don't know if I'll ever feel safe driving alone again. I was driving through Arizona on a long, lonely stretch of highway, the kind where the desert stretches out for miles in every direction, with nothing but the occasional gas station or rest stop to break up the monotony. It was late, probably around 2 a.m, and I hadn't seen another car in over an hour. I'd been drinking way too much coffee to stay awake, so by the time I saw a sign for a rest area, I knew I needed to stop. The rest stop was small, just a couple of picnic tables, a few vending machines, and a bathroom building with flickering fluorescent lights. I parked my car and got out, the air still hot even in the middle of the night. As soon as I stepped out, I felt it. The kind of quiet that feels too thick, too heavy, like the desert itself was holding its breath. There wasn't a sound, not even a breeze. I headed to the restroom, which was dimly lit and reeked of disinfectant. Pushing open the door, I found it completely empty. There were 4 stalls, all with their doors wide open. I walked to the sink to wash my hands, not really thinking much of it, just eager to get back on the road. The faucet was old, one of those where you had to push down hard to get any water out. As I struggled with it, I suddenly heard it, breathing. It was soft at first, barely noticeable over the hum of the lights, but there was no mistaking it. Heavy, deliberate breaths. I stopped listening. The sound was coming from one of the stalls. I glanced behind me, but all the stall doors were still wide open, each one revealing an empty, dimly lit space. The breathing continued, though. It was deeper now, almost laboured. My stomach tightened. Maybe I wasn't as alone in there as I thought. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding too loud in the small room. "Is someone there?" The breathing stopped. For a second I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Maybe it was the pipes, or the wind outside, or maybe I was just overtired. I turned back to the sink and splashed some water on my face. That's when I heard it again, closer this time. It was like whoever, or whatever was breathing had moved toward me without making a sound. My heart started racing. I turned around again, staring at the stalls, trying to figure out where the noise was coming from. Everything looked the same. The doors open, the stalls empty, but the air felt different, heavier. It was like the walls were closing in. I could feel my pulse in my throat now, the uneasy sensation crawling up my spine. I took a step toward the stalls, and that's when I saw it. The farthest stall, the one closest to the wall, had its door slightly ajar, but I could have sworn it had been open just a minute ago. The breathing was louder now, deep and raspy, coming from inside that stall. Every instinct told me to leave, but my feet wouldn't move. I just stood there, staring at the door, waiting for something to happen. It creaked, slowly, just enough for me to see a shadow low to the ground. My mouth went dry, and every hair on my body stood on end. I couldn't see who or what was in there, but I knew something was watching me. That was it. I didn't care what was going on or who needed help. I bolted for the door, nearly tripping over myself as I yanked it open and rushed outside. The second I was out in the open air, I slammed the door behind me and ran straight to my car. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking, heart pounding in my ears. Finally, I got the door unlocked, threw myself inside and locked it. For a moment, I just sat there, breathing hard, staring at the restroom building. It was silent again. No movement, no breathing, just the hum of the lights, flickering like nothing had happened. My brain was still racing, trying to make sense of what I'd just experienced. But then, as I looked closer, I saw something, or someone, standing just inside the restroom doorway. A figure, dark and still, staring right at me. I didn't wait to find out more. I slammed my foot on the gas and peeled out of the rest stop, not looking back until the lights were far behind me. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe.